dangerous man. She sighed and stared up at the blanket of gleaming stars, idly picking out constellations her father had shown her through the lens of a telescope many years before, as she pondered her marital prospects. It seemed the longer she remained a spinster, the more difficult it was to imagine being married. She had been her own woman for so long, and now, at the age of 24, did not want to become a mere appendage, a burden, a moral obligation to any man. Some would argue she already was her father's burden, and too long a weight on his purse, since she had not deigned to yoke herself with a man in holy wedlock. But her father, the Earl of Harecross, abstracted, scholarly, and buried in his ancient Greeks and Macedonians, his language studies and cultural research, never made her feel that she was an encumbrance, legal or otherwise. She stretched out on the ground, cradling her head in her bent arm, and lazily played with the long grass, weaving it in and out of her fingers as she contemplated her mixed feelings towards the Marquess. While Darkefell kissed her, she could think of nothing but how she wished it would go on forever. But when he released her, he was still the same commanding, wretchedly stubborn man. Preposterous to think that marriage to him, apart from the obvious physical delights he could offer and the wicked pleasures he would no doubt teach her, would be anything less than a parade of exasperating arguments and endless aggravation. But lying out on a moonlit cliff in Cornwall in the middle of the night while her cat, Irusan, played with the toads and rodents, would solve nothing. She should go in and sleep. The next day promised another round of visits with new acquaintances in the seaside village of St. Willow on the north coast of Cornwall. Flirtation with Marcus St. James, shopping with Pamela, and perhaps a fete or party with the officers of St. James's regiment billeted in nearby St. Ives. She heaved a sigh, weary at the thought of it, and began to rise, brushing dried grass from her full skirts and petticoat. "Come along, Irusan," she called out softly. As she stood, a movement on the water caught her eye. And on the beach. She hunkered back down and stared over the cliff through the curtain of dancing grass. Irusan returned to her side and rubbed against her legs. "What is that, Puss? On the beach?" Anne whispered, squinting. He answered with an inquisitive "Meow." Moonglow caught the movement and lit it from above like a chandelier above a theatre stage. She watched men on the beach, creeping out from the shadow of the cliff, and spotted a boat approaching, oars swishing through the choppy water. Anne frowned and stared as she put one staying hand on Irusan's thick mane of fur. The moonlight path delineated a boat lumbering low in the water and manned by many oarsmen. A cresting wave carried the boat forward, and it surged onto the sand. The men on the beach dashed forward to pull it up further, and the activity became frenetic. An oilskin cover was thrown back, then barrels and boxes were plucked from the laden boat and passed along a line of dark-clad men. Some slung rope-tied tubs over their shoulders and beetled up the shore to a dray with a draught horse hitched. One figure stood out, alone, waving a cutlass and directing the activity with bold motions. Smugglers. There was no other explanation, and Anne shivered. She was familiar with sordid tales of the brutal tribe, so-called free traders, near her Kentish home. Wondering what she should do, stay down in the grass to avoid detection or depart to the safe confines of the house, she watched, breath held. Cliff House, Pamela's rented home, was a good ways back from the cliff from which it took its name. A rocky cut divided the bluff where she huddled from another prominence beyond, which jutted above the sandy beach at an equal height. As she glanced toward the other cliff, she noted movement in the moonlight, something more than the tall grass rustling in the quickening breeze. Several men stood suddenly, and with a shout surged toward the rocky path along the cut down to the beach. But another figure appeared that same moment, floating impossibly in mid-air beyond the cliff's edge where Anne crouched. She fell back on her rump in the long grass and scuttled, crab-like.